This is Reah, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics, including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more.
Hello, and welcome back again. Yes, I'm wearing the same shirt, the same soy sauce stain. That's fine. So anyway, we are back for chapter 6 of Dirt on My Cloth. And I wanted to point out to my little bookmark here is courtesy of the Warriors of Life Code card deck, which is available at www.connectwithmartin.com. It is a card deck following Martin Salama's autobiography. And Martin is a great friend of mine who he went on a very similar kind of life journey with weights and emotional control and just a lot of things that I can very much relate to. I love talking to Martin, and you can also get his card deck at connectwithmartin.com. He's also been on many, many, many times and will be back soon. And we have gone over different cards in this deck, different sections and things like that. But anyway, it is my bookmark, and that is where it came from. So, chapter 6, traumas and health. Before we start this chapter, I want to make sure I point out that I'm not here to provide diagnosis. Also, self-diagnosis is never a good idea and has been proven potentially hazardous to mental and emotional health. That is important because I do have certain educational background that sometimes can be if you if you don't use the right words legally can lead to confusion on providing a service when you're providing advice and blah blah blah. So anyway, I'm not here to diagnose anybody, and self-diagnosis is always a bad idea. So don't read my book and say that, well, she said she has ADHD and I have these same things, so I have ADHD, blah, blah, like just for an example. Um, yeah. So I'm not here to diagnose, and self-diagnosis is don't do it. So seek professional help. Professionals are always the go-to. Vet your professional, check into them, you know, look at their reviews, their good reviews, their bad reviews, and all the things. The information provided here is simply to give you an idea of what to look for in yourself, your children, your family, your friends, your coworkers, etc., who could benefit from some knowledge, education, awareness, prevention, and or attention, as well as information on where to find help in the back of this book. So I love giving spaces for notes and resources. And in the back of the book, there is a self-reflection portion with things. If you're like me, you read this book, you're gonna have notes all over. I write all over all the books I read, especially like self-help and educational kind of things. So I provided pages for that. And there's also a resources page. One is there's a couple of local resources in there, and then SAMHSA.org, Find Treatment, and NCSACW. So just some helpful resources for, if you're listening or you're watching or you're reading and you're like, hey, I can relate to that. And I would really like to not emotionally relate to that anymore. Mental health is directly connected to and affected by physical and emotional health equally. So also if you listen a lot, I've done episodes where I discuss the wellness wheel. The wellness wheel is at some point, so I'm just kind of like figuring out my office space and in regards to like recording and things like that. This has been a process. I've been recording for 3 seasons now. I started back in, did I start in 2022? I started, I think, I don't know. I thought it was it 23, I guess? 23, 24, 25. January, no, February of 2025 started my third year. So I guess it was 2022. So yeah. So I've been doing this for 3 years and I have found out that in business, and which can apply to podcasting too, in business, your first 5 years is really figuring things out. So this is my third year podcasting, and it's just me. I don't have a team. I don't have, obviously, because if I had a team, I would be probably much more popular. It's fine. Year 5 will get there. Um, maybe year 3, who knows? But um, it takes time to get things where you want them to be in life, business, podcasting, parenting, all kind of stuff. It takes you time to get where you want to be. So I'm figuring out the office space. I'm going to have the wheel is one thing that I am going to have on the wall. I'm going to have a wall dedicated to my background. My friend Martin, he has like this bookshelf behind him and it's got certain things on it, not just books, but it's also got like little sentimental things. I think that's really cool too. So maybe I'll do something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll just put stuff on the walls. I don't know. So anyway, for now, this is my background, but I will be adding a wellness wheel photo. So I say all of that to say that mental health is directly connected to and affected by physical and emotional. It is major components of the wellness wheel, your financial, your spiritual, your physical, your emotional. All these things affect each other. As adults, some of us know how to handle stress due to trauma, and a lot of us have never dealt with our. A lot of us have never dealt with our trauma to know how to handle the stress caused by it. There are certain things that I'm currently working out um, in therapy myself. I'll be 40 in 2 months, 2 months from the day of me recording this. So today I'm recording, it's March 5th. I'll be 40 in exactly 2 months, and I am currently in a process of CBT and actually physically, mentally, emotionally working through digging into these things. So don't, get discouraged. Don't doubt yourself if you're still working on them. If you're 50, if you're 20, you know, we all have different processes, but the most important thing is that you work through them, that you're getting through them. Some of us do not even realize that we still carry stress from our childhood traumas. The first step as an adult with untreated trauma is to become aware. Once you're aware, you can focus on what to address directly. For myself, it was sexual trauma from childhood. I started having flashbacks before I even realized what flashbacks are. During my education related to mental health and wellness, I had access to a world of information related to traumas, triggers, facts, and PTSD that I did not even realize existed. Now, I'm not going to get into the medical side of this right now. However, if you're reading this book and you have questions or you feel you've experienced trauma, have unresolved trauma, please feel free to reach out to me. I do family relationship coaching. Um, I I also coach on trauma healing and things. I have a master's in psychology as well as a master's in holistic mental health and wellness. I do not run a psychology practice. I don't work as a practicing psychologist because I would rather do other things. I would I, I want to provide services on a smaller level to people who can access them, who can't necessarily access therapy and other more expensive things. So, anywho, for myself, my trauma began as a child and manifested into me taking control of sexual situations that I could control as an adult, but could not control as a child. Traumas were not constant, as I know some others have been. No matter how constant, inconsistent, controllable, or uncontrollable trauma is, it affects the person experiencing it. There has been a lot of progress toward recognizing and acknowledging the importance of mental health care. Just like every other social and health related advancement, it is important to keep the positive growth going in the hopes that one day healthy emotions, healthy bodies, healthy minds, and healthy habits will be the new normal. Traumas don't have to be just physical or sexual. Though, while most people are aware of the fact, generally speaking, it is important to be able to apply it to your own life and give yourself the respect and love you deserve by really knowing it. It's one thing to know it, like you've heard it, but to actually know it and feel it. While a lot of us do not or will not notice until we're older, our childhood directly affects our adulthood. How we eat, sleep, experience, and process, process kids, process as kids directly affects us as adults. As children, we cannot always control our situations, surroundings, or responses, and have to do so when we're old enough to control them. Sometimes our trauma can lead us down a painful, walls up journey where we self destruct, and sometimes it leads us to be preventative of reoccurrence of trauma or how we use it to help others who can relate. Sometimes it does both. In my case, it was definitely both. I've self sabotaged as a teenager and young adult, but as a 35-year-old, I use my experiences to educate, prevent, heal, and provide opportunity for growth to others. Traumas, triggers, stress, symptoms, and treatments are all part of our emotional journey from victim to victor. As I previously discussed, untreated childhood trauma can manifest into serious problems in adulthood. Taking a step back to before the child becomes an adult, I have a few things to say on this topic. Children may not express their feelings right away. It may be because they are sworn to secrecy by their abuser. It could be because they fear consequences of telling, or it could be because they love the person and don't want them to get in trouble or even to let that person down. They may not know if they may not know initially that the trauma was traumatic or wrong. If they are groomed, they could think it is normal, and some people believe they deserve their trauma. I can assure you this is never the case. No matter how much a child misbehaves, no matter how much someone loves a child, it is never okay to cause them trauma, violate them, or assault them sexually or otherwise. But in this reference, we're talking about sexual trauma. I can, since we cannot always prevent trauma, maybe we can figure out how to heal from it. Another trauma, death, was one of those things like sexual inappropriateness that I just got used to, or so I thought. Throughout my life, I've experienced the death of friends, family, and patients. I was a CNA for about 5 years and lost some patients due to both sickness and murder. So I'm talking about some gruesome death, unnatural, unforeseen deaths between friends, family, and patients, from being shot over a girl and then having your car set on fire to being shot in the street for trying to help someone, being stabbed in your home for no apparent reason. Assumed a robbery, but it didn't seem like it. Death by a drunk driver hitting another car, running them off the road. Death by a sudden heart attack after losing a ton of weight. Death by blood clot right before brain surgery. Death from losing a battle with diabetes. Death from losing a battle with sickle cell. Death from being stabbed by a girlfriend after having lived through a battle with HIV for years, to death from a heart attack, stroke, but finding out about it while waiting for them to come in the door as you're expecting them from the hospital that day. So these are all things that I've experienced. I had just some of the things that were like, this shit wasn't supposed to be like, this is not normal. It's something that, and these are people like I spent time with these people, like time with these people. One, the the patient who was stabbed, I didn't spend a ton of time, but I was in his house. helping care for him multiple times. Um, in high school, I had a friend and he was murdered over a girl who was also involved with other guys and girls. Um, and then, I mean, this kid was young. He was so young, like 16, maybe about 16. It's fucking horrible. But um, a patient who died from diabetes complications, a friend, someone who was a friend, and I was involved with them for a little bit. He died from complications due to sickle cell. Another friend in my 20s, he was trying to help a woman, got kind of in the middle of a fight, trying to protect a random ass woman and got killed. Someone drunk driving and hit the person I knew's car, sober person. Drunk driver hit their car, run them off the road and killed them. Just like crazy shit. Like, how do you, it's a hard pattern to process. Dealing with death so much can make you numb to loss or it can make you constantly sad. Um, eternal sad, eternally sad. It's my favorite Sims trait. Eternally sad. Sometimes it can do both, and sometimes it takes a while to do both. I spent a large portion of my life not expecting people to stay because they have hurt me, left me, or died. As sad as it is, it's reality. The even sadder thing is that I know there are people who have dealt with worse, like the death of a child. I've experienced that too, if you include a tubal pregnancy. Um, I didn't know that like the child wasn't really even very formed yet. So when I had a tubal pregnancy, um, I've had that and I've had a miscarriage very early on as well. But there are other people who have lost like a fully formed out in the world child, and I can't imagine. So, it's kind of one of those like it could always be worse. It doesn't take away from my grief because it hasn't been, like other people's situations, but for the purposes of looking for a positive kind of outlook on it. I haven't experienced some of these other absolutely horrible things that other people have experienced. Uh, Abortion is not always a choice, and I'll leave it at that. I'm not saying I had an abortion that was not my choice, but rather stating that it's not always a choice in terms of like how other people have lost people or losing people. The people I lost were lost by other people too. I can't imagine how their grief has been for their mothers, family members, or significant others because it must be more intense than the grief I carry, and mine is so heavy. It was not until I lost my mother-in-law due to heart failure that the accumulated loss really started to hit me. One of the first losses I experienced was of my father's father after he disowned me for having a mixed child. But this was after my friend was murdered and his car burnt. So he was murdered, thrown in a ditch, and his car was set on fire. That was that was before my grandfather died. As much as I loved my father's father when I was a child, I did not mourn him when he died. I found out he died when my stepmother called me asking me to console my half sister, which I had no will or capability to do because at the time I was in the numb stage and frankly I was not upset by his death since he killed the relationship years earlier. You would think that I was a walking time bomb with all this grief, and I probably was, just didn't realize it. I was. I was a walking time bomb for a very long time. When my nana passed unexpectedly in the hospital, it was probably the first of the box of grief I had been hiding away. After losing my mother-in-law, it all came out again. I found myself thinking about the friends I had added to my grief box over the years I never really mourned. I've lost people since then, and I mourned them, and then I took it back away. It can't be healthy, but it is probably the healthiest thing that I've handled on my own. So now I hope to be able to help others with their grief through counseling and coaching, to be the person who helps them understand how important it is to open that grief box. Leave it cracked. Don't shove it under your heart and let it build pressure. Just know that you're not alone. Your grief is important too. This is something that I still am navigating, because it is important to process your grief. And it's been a while since I've been able to talk about these things without sitting here starting to cry. And it's, it's therapy, it's life experience, it's many things that I have been working on to not be that time bomb anymore. Yeah, funerals are not a place I like to be. I did, however, go to my mama's funeral not too long ago. And, it wasn't easy. But yeah, that was a doozy. I also almost murdered someone at the funeral because sexual inappropriateness. Go drunk assholes. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. Funerals. So I refuse to go to funerals. The last funeral I attended was the grandmother of a close friend of mine and someone I attended church with. She was such a sweet lady, and it actually happened and was actually expected to return home when she passed, just like my nana. I think I've been to three funerals in my life. The first was when I was younger. A young boy passed who my mother cared for at work, and then my nana's, and then my friend's grandmother. I did not attend the funerals of the many other people who have passed in my life. One I didn't attend because I was not notified until after the funeral by a friend, and not even of the family because we had not talked in a while. Another because there was drama around this person's murder that made it unsafe for a mother of two to attend. Others because I just could not get myself to go and cry that much again, to yet face another death. Another I did not attend because I did not want to be around most of their family members who I separated myself from for my own sanity. I think that I probably should have gone to more funerals. It was selfish, maybe, to not have gone. I just can't process the amount of emotion that is built up from so many deaths at this point. Maybe I feel subconsciously like if I don't go to the funeral, the person will still be alive. Just like if I don't see my father, I can keep the healthy image of him I held onto in my head. Now, at the time of writing this book, my father was still alive, as this was about between 5 and 10 years ago when I was writing it. So holding on to so much emotional pain is not good. I know it's not. How can I go back at this point and face it all? It is hard enough just to know about it, to think about times when that person was alive, to think about the horrific events they endured as they were murdered or as they went to the hospital thinking they were going home later that day or in the next few days. To think about the memories that you have with them and how freaking amazing they were and how they did not deserve what happened to them. It is hard. It is even harder to look at their lifeless faces and know that you'll never see them alive again. I can't do that with another person I love. I actually had interest in working in a funeral home for a period of time. When someone dies of natural causes or they're sick, I can understand it. I can comprehend it. And the people who came in would not be people I knew. And I have become numb to the pain of death anyway, right? Not true. The pain of constant death is not something you ever really become numb to. You just become numb to processing it. You get mad, you get upset, you get confused, and then you box it away. Death is something I've gotten used to. However, it is not something I will ever get over. Identifying a body and seeing a body in a casket, all made up and prepared for presentation at a funeral, are so oddly different. Identifying a body is done before the whole process of preparation for presentation, so it's just a cold, stiff body lying on a gurney. It is not as intense as you would think, at least not to me, but it is as real as you would think. In my experience, I saw this person in the ICU for a bit before I identified their body, so processing that they were dead was done more so in steps. opposed to seeing them alive and well to unexpectedly see them dead. Being in the room while someone's life leaves their body is an extreme experience, and it's probably why seeing their dead body was not as intense as I thought it would be. Death is just how you think it would feel. The room changes, the air changes, everything changes. Before you decide to turn off the machines, you talk to them and express one last hope that they will show signs of life on their own. You pray, you kiss them, and you understand it's time to say goodbye so their spiritual being can move on to their physical and their physical being can be cremated or buried. Experiencing death in this manner is surprisingly more peaceful and understanding than seeing on the news that getting a phone call that someone you know or love has been murdered or even died of natural causes, but at an unexpected time. I'm grateful for the goodbyes I've gotten and grateful for the time I've had with everyone I've lost. This brings up the grief process. Death happens and it's guaranteed to happen. You may not have friends who die from being murdered or overdosing. You may not have family who dies before you expected them to, or way before you think they should have. Every one of us will experience death in some way. You may think we have it all under control, but we don't. Unless we have formal training or grief counseling experience, it is not something you should just box up and deal with later. As someone who has witnessed someone they love absolutely and undyingly grieve the loss of their mother, it is a rough and difficult process that is never finished. Grieving someone we have lost, whether it's a parent, a friend, or a family member, is an unavoidable process. It is a process that no matter how many times someone experiences it to any degree, whether we may feel numb to it at first, it never changes, it never gets easier. I personally feel like I can handle the passing of family and friends due to age, but when my own mother dies, if she is not suffering more by being alive, it will be difficult. Her friends are more than welcome to celebrate her life, but if it happens anytime soon, I would not have the capacity to process it in 3 days to put together or attend a funeral. I would have her cremated upon her wishes and then hold a funeral when I was capable of handling it. Grief is something you deserve to do in a healthy and productive manner. It is something we'll all experience at one time or another. It is important to grieve in a healthy manner, but if you cannot, for whatever reason, there are professionals available to help you. Even knowing your own limits, thoughts, and feelings associated with it are just as helpful. If you don't feel like talking to a counselor, you can always write about it. You may even include it in a chapter of your book and express the importance of healthy grieving. Whatever way you choose to do it for yourself. Do it for the ones you've lost. Do it for the loved ones you still have here with you. Do it for everyone who cares about you. Do it for yourself. Honor the ones you lost by grieving healthily. Since I've spoken about traumatic experiences and you've come to know that how they have affected me in life, I think it's appropriate to discuss how trauma can affect you mentally, physically, and emotionally, and how it is so important to your overall health. It is also important to start working on healing. You read in the previous passages the effects trauma can have on a child. It is important to know how they can also wait to prevent themselves in an obvious or understandable manner in adulthood. Let's continue this journey with a checklist you can use to determine whether you or someone you know has experienced symptoms, which could be a sign that they need attention concerning you or their emotional or mental health. So this just kind of goes on to kind of provide a little scenario. Sometimes we see the signs before the person experiencing them does and can be useful for preparing your responses to them. I've had my husband say to me a few times something like, "Hey, I've noticed that you've been a little anxious lately, and this helps me to evaluate, acknowledge, and refocus." We need to be told sometimes because we do not always notice a shift or repeat in our pattern, our stress pattern. So, you know, and of course, how the person says it to us is going to it is going to kind of determine how we respond to it, right? It's like, hey, you're being moody. Hey, you're blah, blah, blah. We're probably not going to listen to it. We're going to be like, oh, you're just talking crap, whatever. Mm. But, if you are someone who notices this shift in personality, this shift in anxiety, this, shift in sleep, these unhealthy shifts in someone, try to approach it in a healthy manner. Hey, I just want to check in on you. I've noticed blah, blah, blah. Do you want to talk? Would you like me to help you find someone who you can talk to professionally? Something like that. They may not want to hear it, but it means we have to give it attention. Prevention is key. If you see the signs in someone, you can confidently and comfortably use your knowledge to prevent or tend to them in yourself or someone else. These signs to look for include loss of feeling / experiencing pleasure from previously pleasurable or enjoyable activities, feeling feeling of depressed mood, feeling hopeless, loss of energy, loss of appetite, loss / difficulty of sleep, loss or difficulty of focus or concentration, being restless at an extreme rate, suicidal or self-harming thoughts. Now that you know some signs, also know that some of these can occur and be either related to other health issues or can only occur occasionally. This is not necessarily cause for separate concern, especially if you or they are able to correct behavior with some coping mechanisms or skills. However, if you or someone else experience these symptoms multiple times a day, multiple times a week or a few weeks, and or are frequently occurring, could be a sign of potential serious situation, and it might be necessary to seek professional help. It is a great idea to try to talk to the person you care for, your child or your friend, and help them get the help they deserve. Sometimes this does not work, and it's absolutely fine to refer them to someone or bring it to someone's attention who can give them help, so long as this is done respectfully. It's also perfectly okay if you cannot provide the help. Just being supportive and acknowledging the need is helpful. Trauma of an emotional trauma of an emotional proportion can be caused by any experience that affects you emotionally in a terrifying, deeply saddening, or extreme causation of fear, restlessness, sleep, stress, or depression. Trauma does not have to be physically present to exist either. It can manifest as physical symptoms that we do not always know to associate with trauma. This can be done by knowing what trauma can do to your body without the trauma itself being physical. So there is emotional trauma that, you might not have noticed something physically happen to a person, but they could be emotionally traumatized. When your body experiences mental, emotional, or psychological trauma, your brain goes into a flight or fight mode. This is the reason your mood or feelings can change in the moment. Your immune system can also go into the same type of mode to fight off the virus or illness it thinks is causing an attack in order to protect your body. Sometimes your body thinks, oh, something's trying to attack me, and it sends you into this like defensive stance. These things can also happen after the trauma or later in life, whether you feel like you're in a similar situation or something triggers you to think about the trauma to the point you feel like you're experiencing it again. Again, if you find yourself in a situation that was that was physically, emotionally, psychologically traumatic, your brain is like, oh, we're here again. It might not even be that exact same situation. You might not even be in that same type of danger, but your past experience is going to cause you possibly to feel like you are or that you might be. And that does still deserve attention. It deserves healthy attention because it means typically that that previous trauma that you thought was in the past is not completely unresolved yet. The stress from trauma or consequential PTSD can have effects such as weight gain or loss of sexual interest, adverse effect on the immune system. You might start getting sick a lot, loss of sexual interest, and physical body pains, eating disorders, lack of energy, heart risk, loss or decline of senses such as sight, hearing, or taste, and stomach problems. Yes, these can all come from an increase in hormone levels due to experiencing trauma. When I get really stressed out, my stomach hurts. And I'm like, well, I didn't eat anything that should be making my stomach hurt, but I am really stressed out. If you're anything like me, this information can make you a little nervous or anxious. It's absolutely okay and normal. It's a lot of information. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and say, I've got this. Because you do. Taking the time to read a book about someone's experiences speaks highly of your willingness to learn and understand. Taking the time to read or listen. Now that you also know a little more about your body and why it does the things it does as a response to trauma, you have the information you need to start or continue your own healing journey. Remember, you got this. And then there's a little kind of like example, uh, a little example conversation that says me. What was I talking about? Also me. What were you talking about? Also me. How did we get on this topic? Also me. What did I come in here for? Also them. You already told me that. Also them. Oh, them. Them. I already told you that. Also them. You already told me that. Also them. Wait, can you finish the first thing you were talking about? Both me and them. How did we get so far off topic? This is like a just like a little sample conversation. I don't know if it's ADHD, PTSD. It's just sometimes when you're talking to people about certain conversations, certain situations, you can like get flustered your brain. Sometimes like, whoa, I don't want to deal with this, and you're like, wait, you get forgetful what's happened to me. If you haven't noticed, I tend to jump around when telling a story. It is annoying when trying to have a conversation with someone about one topic. I often get to finish my original thought, and then sometimes I run out of time for whatever reason, do not get back to my original thought. Luckily, my family and my children are used to it. Just tell me to focus or remind me of what I was talking about before I got so off track and forgot my original thought completely. It can be frustrating to start a conversation and forget what you were going to say because you got sidetracked, distracted, or interrupted, and you completely forgot what you were going to say. See, said that twice. I think it happens mostly with my family, not as much in other situations, because when I have conversations in a professional setting, the conversations are about a specific thing or usually not lengthy enough for me to bounce around from topic to topic. I prefer conversations over email or text and they require long focus because I can be in the middle of a sentence and completely forget what I was talking about. When I'm writing, I can write a little about each thing here and there, and I have record of what I said. This book took me about 3 years to write, whereas the workbook I wrote took about a week because it is instruction and information based rather than based on me telling a story. So the book, the actual writing of the book only took about 3 years. Um, Start to finish of the book took five because I started a bulk of the book. I started an outline and writing about certain things, but it became emotionally so overwhelming. I put the book down for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then I started back writing and finished it. When I was a kid, from what I can remember, I took medication for ADHD up until I was about 7. I know at one point I was seeing a therapist and was experiencing hallucinations. I'm not sure if the hallucinations are why I was seeing her, just part of it, or whether or not I was on medication at the time. I appreciate that my mother gave me the opportunity to have a say in what went into my body by not throwing a fit over me not wanting to continue to make the medication. I know that may seem crazy, but doing so in an informative and educated way is beneficial to the child because it gives them control over what happens to their body. For this reason and others, this is important to me. Accurate information, such as long-term effects of certain prescription medication, is something that takes time to develop. When it comes to a medication that could cause harm to someone later in life, the choice to decide whether they take it or not is something we can give our children at any age when they're intelligent enough to discuss it. Unless them taking it determines the existence or absence of their or someone else's life or overall health, it cannot be treated in a different way. With that said, exploring other options and not just leaving it be is an extremely important next step. As a young adult, I tried a couple of ADHD medications that made me feel anxious or out of it. At one point, a friend of mine, RIP asked me if I was on drugs, although he knew it was not something I had previously experimented with. But because of how anxious, spaced out, and unaware I was during the conversation we had the first day I tried ADHD medication as an adult. I've never been a fan of medication for myself or my children. Two of my children were on medication for ADHD for a short period of time, but once I saw it was not helping them and they were experiencing other symptoms, I turned to other forms of help like therapy and a big brother mentor program. I accept medication can help some people, but I also know other methods work best for others. I have medicated children. I have unmedicated. Well, three of my five have ADHD. Um, I've tried medication with all three of them, and one currently takes medication, and two do not. Um, the ones who do not, we have done therapy and other things, and the one who does take it is also in therapy because send the whole family to therapy. We all need it. Um, I'm in no way saying you should or should not take medicine. Again, I'm not here for medical advice. That is something you should discuss with your doctor and your family. I do suggest doing research on the medication and other forms of treatment or management before only considering medication. Love my kid's current therapist. Medication is not the first step in their current therapist suggestion box, and I like that. I do not take a medication for ADHD now. I have yet to find something that works for me. Some days I can feel its presence when I haven't gotten enough sleep. I have too many things going on, don't have enough going on, am stressed out because I haven't been successful at the most current thing I'm focused on. Had too much decaf coffee, which, believe it or not, adds up from the traces of actual caffeine it still contains. Just need a mental break from all the noise around me or from the constant running of my mind. Have gone days living off decaf coffee, blueberries, and a ridiculous amount of Cape Cod chips or Cheez-Its, want to watch movies with my kids, or want some alone time because, and probably have spent the whole week overreacting to compensate for the one day I did not feel successful. I struggle with. I struggle with this sometimes. Still. Um, I I hold myself to an expectation of being successful every single day. Uh, I feel like if I'm not doing something productive, I'm not successful that day. And sometimes taking a day to just relax is being successful. You don't have to constantly run 24/7. You don't have to constantly, I don't know, like you don't have to go 24/7. It's also important to take time for yourself and not just if I'm not moving, I'm not productive and I suck, you know? Um, those days usually come when I've planned, organized, slept enough, eaten well, have accurate household financial information, allowed myself to have some alone time and listen to enough music. I don't ask for a lot, it's just the ability to control literally everything, but not to have control, not to have to control literally everything. It is a, it's stems from, you know, being small and not being able to control the things that are happening to you. And when you don't deal with that, you grow up into an adult who has an incessant need to control everything. And when you don't feel like you're controlling everything, you feel like you're not being successful because you're not controlling everything. And that leaves room for error. Um, but that's why it's important to cater to our mental health and process the things that we go through in a healthy manner. Remember when I said about stress affecting your body? It can show up in things like ADHD too. My husband pointed out not too long ago that he can always tell when I have too much going on, something big is about to happen in my life, or I'm stressed out because I always get sick. I did a little research on it and looked at some of my patterns. His thought was right, or at least that is an existing connection that happens in people who experience high anxiety or stress. Our body has a fight or flight response when we experience extreme or persistent heightened hormone release, and our body feels the need to fight or flight when we're stressed and anxious due to conditions like ADHD as well. It usually happens around the same time of year, though I have not found that connection yet. I used to think it was just a change in season as it gets cold. Sometimes it could be this, and other times it's probably me stressing myself into being sick. The great thing is that we have recognized it, and now I can work to grow in a positive direction. Adulting without medication is not easy, for me at least. I do feel that it's beneficial. I have had interest in holistic healing and focus for a while, and it is what made me decide what degrees I wanted to earn in college as well. Most states require a clinical license to be maintained with a master's degree or PhD to prescribe medication. And since I want to at least try to run a successful practice without the need for medication, I decided not to go into clinical licensure, at least for now. I don't I don't want the ability to prescribe medication. I would rather either refer someone or I would prefer to, you know, try to work through things without medication being the first line of defense. That's just me personally. Um, You can find more information on how to locate holistic practices in your area in the back of this book as well. I believe that education, identification, and acknowledgement of patterns and understanding the specifics of what relates specifically to you and life experience, you and your life experience can provide help healing and ability to maintain the things in our life we may not always understand or feel normal from. Self-awareness is something that comes with time, growth, and experiences that teach us about ourselves, our habits, our preferences, our responses, and even what signs to look for when something needs attention. Some people learn this young, and others may take a while to do so, and some may never learn it at all. Self-awareness can improve our relationships and may even allow us to experience things we otherwise may have withheld from ourselves. So self-awareness improves our well-being, our mental health and well-being. It it doesn't just mean being aware of ourselves for the benefit of others. It means being aware for our own benefit, our, for our own benefit. Our overall health is important, and as we know, our mental health is part of our overall health. Proving our holistic health intertwined aspects of our whole health to be most important. We know that everything we experience is a little crumb to add to our whole cookie. Is the page in our own autobiography. It's another experience to check off your life, whether good or bad. Some things can feel like you're never going to recover, and sometimes we don't ever really fully recover. We just evolve. Some things always hurt. They are always with you, and they are rough to talk about. I didn't talk about certain experiences too much of anybody, including my mother, until I was well into my 20s. For me, this was partially due to memory suppression and partially due to me not understanding what I was experiencing, or maybe even not thinking my experiences were relatable or worth discussing. Sometimes it can feel like you're replaying someone else's experience inside your head, and you may even question if this actually happened to you. Don't dismiss those thoughts or feelings. We may beat ourselves up because we didn't do something we should have, did not report it, or did not process it in the healthiest way. The best thing to do is move forward. Counseling and therapy is the most common way to move forward, but it's not always the easiest and most affordable way. And sometimes we just find ways to avoid doing what's best for us. Kids, work, transportation, or even or even doing what I did and convincing yourself you're mentally healthy and don't need counseling because it won't help anyway, can all be used as excuses to not get help. The truth is, you absolutely need help, and even more so, you deserve it. Whether it is finding a counselor in your area through a Google search or even talking to a friend, it is worth it. I'm not saying you have to take out student loans educating yourself on psychology, mental health, and overall wellness to better understand and help yourself and others like I did, but it definitely doesn't hurt to gain an education that can change your own and others' lives. Healing from your trauma and taking care of yourself however you choose is necessary to be your best self. If you or someone you know needs help in the areas of trauma and mental health, or you just want to become more educated, you can find resources and directions on how to find resources in your area in the back of this book. Um, don't worry. Don't let worry, fear, or discomfort with unfamiliar hold you back. Take control of your amazingly inspired growth from who you are to the uncapped potential that awaits. Learn, express, discuss, and educate. It might be hard at times, but you'll be proud of yourself when you get through it. These resources, again, are at the back of the book. That is chapter 6. So there are 3 chapters left at this point. and I will be kind of spacing it out to make it not go by so quickly. But that is chapter 6 of Dirt on My Cloth. The next chapter after this is Perfectly Placed, and it talks about adoption. Chapter 8 is Emotionally Challenged, and chapter 9 is Reactions, which is kind of my reaction to life things, kind of wrapping up the book and stuff like that. So I hope that this. I know the beginning of book was the beginning of book is kind of rocky because it talks about a lot. I mean, the whole book is pretty intense, and the people in my family who have read it said they've had to like kind of read it in like read it in stages. It's a lot, especially when you're close to the person writing it and you have an emotional connection to that person. It can be difficult to learn that much about someone's every thought and emotion so kind of quickly. But it's yeah. So I hope that you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, anything that you would like for me to talk about outside of reading, maybe just like in a regular episode, um, let me know. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can get updates about new episodes. Episodes air every Thursday at 6 a.m. Um, on both YouTube and all platforms. Apple Podcast, iHeart, all the things. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Check us out on YouTube at Reah Higgs, ReahHagues. You can also keep up with us on Instagram at Just the Who Podcast.